All right. Where's that? Well, let's get these passed out. All right. Jill, you have your copies and everything, and you good? Okay. Ready, set? Good morning, and thank you all for being here today. First, let me start by saying our thoughts and prayers are with the victims and the families affected by the mass shootings in Las Vegas. Obviously a terrible, terrible tragedy for our country. So today we're here to announce the 2018 health insurance rates for Minnesota's individual and small group markets, and to give consumer guidance on how best to shop for the insurance during the annual open enrollment period that begins on November 1st. Before we get started, let me take a moment to thank my staff who worked on this year's rate review, including a great deal of the actuarial analysis. Our health insurance team includes Fred Anderson, who's the Acting Deputy Commissioner for Insurance, Christy Bone, Chief Health Actuary, Allie Zollner, Health Policy Advisor, Maybeth Moses, Health Project Coordinator, Laura Fink, Actuarial Analyst, Candace Gergen, Filing Analyst, Asia Davis, also a Filing Analyst, and Sherry Mortensen Brown, a Filing Analyst. And as you can tell, we have a good staff, one strong, that reviews all these things. I also want to thank the staff at the Minnesota Department of Health who partnered with us in this effort. All of these folks are dedicated public servants, and I'm very grateful for their hard work on behalf of the people of Minnesota. Joining me today here are Allison O'Toole, CEO of MNsure, Commissioner Emily Johnson Piper from the Minnesota Department of Human Services, and Commissioner Dr. Ed Ellinger from the Minnesota Department of Health. First, I'd like to offer a little background on the rate review process. As the state agency that regulates insurance companies doing business in Minnesota, the Department of Commerce is responsible for rate review. Our overriding goal is to have a competitive, stable insurance market that provides consumers with fair, affordable access to health insurance. It is important to recognize that what rate review does and does not do. Rate review does not mean the Commerce Department sets insurance rates. It also does not mean we can force any insurer to do business in the individual market in Minnesota. With rate review, we carefully evaluate the proposals submitted by insurance companies to comply with Minnesota and federal laws and our actuarial standards. Rates proposed by insurers must be adequate to pay for expected medical claims and expenses on behalf of policyholders, and they cannot be excessive. Moreover, the Minnesota Department of Health ensures that proposed plans comply with requirements for the adequacy of healthcare provider networks. Now, today's rate announcement is for the individual health insurance market and the small business, or what we call the small group health insurance market. As of April this year, the individual market included about 166,000 enrollees, which is less than 4% of Minnesotans. Who are these people? They are Minnesotans who buy their own coverage rather than getting it through an employer or a public program like Medicare, Medicaid, or Minnesota Care. They include farmers, early retirees, real estate agents, daycare providers, barbers, and many other Minnesotans who are self-employed. In many cases, it includes their family members as well. The small group market offers plans that provide coverage to businesses and organizations with 2 to 50 full-time employees. As of last December, these plans covered about 263,000 people, or 5% of all Minnesotans. Let me first turn to the small group rates. In recent years, our small group health insurance market has been relatively stable in terms of insurer participation, market size, and rates. It continues to be a relatively stable market. There are 9 companies that will be offering plans for 2018. One insurer currently in the small group market is leaving. Federated announced earlier this year that it was withdrawing from the market, not only here in Minnesota, but in 22 other states as well. Now, Federated's main business is commercial property and casualty insurance, and its presence in Minnesota's health insurance market was modest. Also relatively stable has been the overall size of Minnesota's small group market, covering between 250 and 300,000 Minnesotans each year. Finally, during the past few years, most small group insurers have had annual increases in the single digits, largely reflecting the general rise in health care costs. The final average rates for 2018 show a wide range of essentially no change for two insurers to an increase of 23% for one insurer. However, the three largest companies in the small group market, Health Partners Insurance Company, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and Medica Insurance Company, have rate increases of 12.2%, 9.2%, and 7.8%, respectively. The increases, again, reflect rising healthcare costs overall. They also reflect higher medical utilization levels and claims due to what insurers characterize as somewhat less healthy enrollment populations. The main news, though, is the individual market. And this year, compared to last, we have a little better news to report. A year ago at this time, we announced rate increases for 2017 that were very high across the board, 50% or more. And if you remember, I said the individual market was in an emergency situation. The red lights were flashing and the sirens were sounded. Today, there may be no red lights, no sirens, but you could say there is still a big flashing sign that says caution. In short, there is still much work to be done. Before I get to the rates for 2018, though, I'd like to offer some context about this past year's journey bringing us here today. First, there is the national context. This year, Washington has been sending terribly mixed messages, to say the least, about our nation's healthcare policy and the future of health coverage for tens of millions of Americans, including many Minnesotans. By contrast, in Minnesota, we have tried to be very clear and consistent. Our message has been straightforward. We are committed to doing what it takes to save and stabilize Minnesota's individual health insurance market. Uncertainty is the enemy of consumers and insurers alike. So here at the state level in Minnesota, we have tried to provide as much certainty and clarity as we can. Minnesota has taken affirmative steps to stabilize our individual health insurance market to protect Minnesotans and their coverage. Last year at this time, we had a near collapse of Minnesota's individual health insurance market. Right now, we see a number of other states facing a similar crisis, including our neighbor to the south, Iowa. I often use the medical metaphor. If we think of the individual market as a patient, the Minnesotas had a massive heart attack last year that was nearly fatal. And only with great effort were we able to save the patient in the emergency room. The individual market remained alive for 2017, but at a great cost, literally, with huge premium increases and limited provider networks. By last fall's open enrollment period, we had succeeded in getting the patient out of the emergency room, but it was still in intensive care. We knew the prognosis for this patient was not good unless we took serious measures. Minnesota's policymakers saw the flashing red lights and heard the sirens, and they took action. In January, the governor and the legislature agreed on a one-time 25% premium discount program for Minnesotans in the individual market who did not qualify for federal premium tax credits. The premium discounts helped them maintain their coverage. It helped keep people in the market, and it offered immediate financial relief against very high rate increases. It was also an important factor in helping to stabilize the market for 2017 as a starting point for market stability going forward. While essential and important, this premium relief offered only a temporary emergency fix for just 1 year. Those people who received discounts in 2017 were partially shielded from rate increases. Because they will not have those discounts in 2018, their rate increases will rise from the discounted rate to the 2018 premiums. State policymakers also looked at other new tools to put Minnesota's individual health insurance market on a more secure, sustainable pathway. These included the governor's proposal to allow people to buy into Minnesota Care for their coverage. Another proposal was the creation of a temporary state-based reinsurance program, a proposal that was ultimately passed by the legislature, contingent on federal approval, which we received less than 2 weeks ago. Minnesota is only the second state in the nation to enact a reinsurance program with federal approval. Reinsurance addresses a key challenge in Minnesota's individual market, specifically that a limited number of people cause the highest costs and highest claims, pushing up rates for everyone in this small market. A Commerce Department analysis found that just 2.2% of enrollees account for about half of total claim costs in the entire individual market. To address this challenge, reinsurance provides a financial backstop against these high-cost claims and thereby reduces premiums for all consumers in the individual market. Minnesota's new law authorized up to $271 million per year for the reinsurance program for 2018 and 2019. A significant portion of this amount will come by retaining the foregone federal funding for premium tax credits that would have otherwise been spent on Minnesotans without reinsurance because of higher premiums. We estimate that reinsurance is reducing premiums for 2018 by an average of 20% from what they would otherwise be. So this brings us to the individual market rates for 2018. After 2 years of large rate increases in the individual health insurance market, the numbers show that the new state reinsurance program will help stabilize for 2018 rates. As you can see in the rate packet, they range from a decrease of 38% to an increase of less than 3%. So this is positive news for Minnesota, especially when other states across the country are announcing rate increases well up in the double digits. For example, our neighbor to the south, Iowa, is looking at nearly a 57% rate increase with just one insurer in the market. But the fact remains, too many Minnesotans still pay too much for health coverage they need. The Minnesotans in the toughest spot are those who are not eligible for the federal tax credits and who will no longer have the state's 25% discount available to them next year. The reality is that this group of Minnesotans will be facing higher net rate increases in 2018 than the average rate figures indicated. I also wanted to mention one other aspect of the plans for 2018. 4 of the 5 insurance companies requested and were approved for capacity limits in order to manage their financial or network capacity to serve enrollees in 2018. Now, a capacity limit or an enrollment cap is the maximum number of people that an insurer can accept into its plans for 2018. If the company reaches its capacity limit, its plans will no longer be offered for sale. However, all current enrollees with an insurer are guaranteed renewal of their coverage as long as they sign up during an open enrollment. If you remember, all but one of the insurers had capacity limits for 2017. Only one actually reached its limit, but then accepted new enrollees again when it reached its cap. So this year, every county has at least one insurer without a capacity limit. So every Minnesotan who needs coverage will be able to find an insurance plan in 2018, though not necessarily the specific insurer or provider network they prefer. To have the best choice, it is important for consumers to shop and compare and select a plan as early as possible once the open enrollment period begins on November 1. And in a moment, Allison O'Toole will tell you more about how Minnesotans can shop and get the best deal for their coverage in 2018. Let me conclude, as I did last year, with another call for action. As a result of reinsurance, Minnesotans' individual health insurance market will remain out of intensive care. But reinsurance alone is not a cure-all. In fact, the patient's recovery is still very tentative. We need a market that is growing, not shrinking. To achieve a more sustained recovery, reforming Minnesota's health insurance market will remain a very serious challenge. And it goes beyond the individual market alone. To a great extent, the rising health insurance rates that we all face are being driven by the rising costs of health care itself. We need to get a handle on these costs while ensuring quality health care. We need to look at innovations in cost-effective health care delivery to ensure that we get the most value for our health care dollars. We need to look at our payment systems to get the incentives right to affordable quality care. And we need to look at prescription drugs, because we have all, as we have all heard and seen, the price gouging horror stories are outrageous, and many have directly experienced them. We need cost and price transparency. The cost of health should be transparent for medical services across the board, in my view. We need to ensure the availability of low-cost generics, and we need to make sure the big pharmacy benefit management companies that control much of the market are acting in the best interests of consumers. At the federal level, we also need to look at a permanent reinsurance program for the entire nation, because it did make a positive difference in the first 3 years of the ACA before it expired. Here in Minnesota, we have always been a leader in healthcare reform. We must continue to lead the way in innovation. And we must work together and find common ground with policies that provide people of our state with peace of mind and a sense of security through affordable access to the health care that they and their families need. Thank you. Now I'd like to turn it over to Allison for her perspective.
Perfect. Good morning, everyone. I'm Allison O'Toole. I'm MNsure CEO. And as Minnesotans get their first glimpse of this year's rates, I just want to note a few things that they should keep in mind. There's been a lot of confusing political noise out there this year. I don't have to tell anyone that. But I want to simplify this for Minnesotans on the individual market. So 3 quick points. First, MNsure is open for business and ready to help Minnesotans enroll into coverage and get protected. Second, tax credits are still available to Minnesotans to save money off their monthly premiums, but they can only be accessed through MNsure. And third, we have free in-person assistance available all across the state. Those are just the 3 things Minnesotans on the individual market, that individuals on the individual market need to know. I want to say a few words about a couple of those things. First, saving money. Only through MNsure can Minnesotans take advantage of advanced premium tax credits. These tax credits act like instant discounts off monthly premium bills. Some Minnesotans mistakenly believe that tax credits are only for low-income individuals, but that's not true. This year, an individual earning up to $48,240 a year or a family of 4 earning up to $98,400 a year can qualify. Last year, about 2/3 of our enrollees did qualify, and those tax credits are making a real difference for Minnesotans. The average tax credit across the state is more than $7,000 a year, and that's real money. Understandably, it's easy to get discouraged about the cost of health insurance, but many Minnesotans are often pleasantly surprised that they're eligible for some type of assistance. So when it comes to premium costs, the price Minnesotans see in today's release may not be the price they ultimately pay. To get the most accurate financial assistance available to you, Minnesotans should fill out an application at MNsure.org starting November 1st. Often tax credits can offset or even eliminate year-to-year premium increases, and you'll see that illustrated in the packet of scenarios that we've given out today. Again, these tax credits can only be accessed through MNsure. Finally, I want to highlight the consumer assistance I mentioned earlier as well. MNsure still has free in-person assistance in every corner of this state to help consumers. We know that enrolling in health insurance isn't always easy, and that's why we have more than 1,500 certified navigators and brokers who stand ready to help Minnesotans get coverage. Minnesotans anxious to start the enrollment process should go to our website, find an assister in their area, and make an appointment. So remember, tax credits are available to many Minnesotans only through MNsure, and we have free in-person assistance across the state. In closing, let me just say this. In Minnesota, 96% of our state is insured. That's a state record and the second highest in the country. We've led the nation 2 years in a row in percentage of new enrollees. We're making historic progress. And this year, we look forward to helping even more Minnesotans enroll in the coverage they need and deserve. Thank you.